Happy Friday. You are listening to the She Heals Radio Show on Awesome God Radio. It is Friday, June 5th, 2020. I am your host, Whitney J. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are tuning in on the Awesome God Radio app, thank you so much. I pray that you are just enjoying all the shows and everything that Awesome God Radio is doing to bring the news to you. If you haven't downloaded the app, you, my friend, are missing out. Amazing shows, amazing music. You gotta join. I'm telling you, it's amazing. If you are tuning in on Facebook Live or on YouTube, thank you so much. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, and share it to your page. Shout out to Super Producer Q, who is taking good care of me always. Make sure our show is available to you, and let's hop in. We have an amazing show today. We have an amazing guest today, Pastor and author Kevin Johnson. He's going to be joining us talking about all things leadership. So listen, how are y'all feeling? Put something in the comments so I can see you. How are you guys feeling? If you are feeling anything like me, you are probably feeling a little weighed down. This has been quite a week for a lot of reasons. There's been a lot of good things that have happened this week. There's been a lot of emotionally taxing things that have happened this week. It has been a lot. And it's been really difficult. And I am so thankful. We planned this show ahead of time, but God always knows what you need when. And I'm so thankful that we are talking about the subject of leadership today, because what we need most right now is a leader. I know you guys are like me and you're looking and you're paying attention, right? And I know for me, I've been really just looking at the way things are panning out. You've got people that are out there, they are posting, they are making donations, they are protesting. My sons and I participated in a peaceful protest here in Howard County, Maryland, earlier this week. It was amazing. You have so many people doing things, but everybody is looking for that leader. And everybody is not only looking for a leader, but we are also critiquing every person that is in our path, right? So we're critiquing, are you doing enough? And, I have seen so many posts, I was looking over, just the last couple of days, and people have a lot to say, right? Some of them are saying, where are the celebrities in this? They're not posting enough. They're not donating enough. They're not protesting enough. People are confused on what to do. Tuesday was Blackout Tuesday, and there was so much confusion about what you were actually supposed to do on Tuesday. And it was frustrating because some people are like, do this, and some people are like, do that. And so many of us, we are tuned into social media. We are locked into social media, and we use it for our basis for everything. So then when you are unclear on what to do, we find ourselves looking to other people for guidance, right? We are always looking for a leader. We are always looking for somebody to set the tone for what it is we're supposed to do. If you're a teacher like myself, you're looking to your leaders, your administrators, right? If, in this country, we're looking at our government, our president, we're always looking for a leader. If it's a church, we're looking at our pastors, right? Here's what I wanted to share. This is what God gave me to share to you. Every last one of us has a platform, and we are leading someone, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. We are always in the position of leadership. If you are a parent, you are leading your children. If you're a community member, you're leading somebody in your community. If you are on social media, regardless of whether you signed up for that or not, you are a leader, because somebody is coming to your page to get something. And that is a lot of responsibility. That is a big, big thing to take on. It is the act and art of leadership. And, right now we are seeing the evidence of having a leader in place that is not competent to do the work. We see that right now, right? We are seeing decisions being made because we have a leader that is not competent to do the work. So my question for you is very simple. What kind of leader are you? Because, we are always looking to somebody else, right? But what are you doing? And so one of the things that this week, I was stressing myself out a little bit of like, Lord, this problem in America is huge. It's not a new problem. It's not just now becoming an issue, but Lord, what is my part in this? And I had somebody reach out to me and they were like, you need to use your platform to do something. And I hope that you're going to use your platform. And I thought about that and I thought, well, wait a minute. Don't we all have a platform? Don't we all have a part in this? And a lot of times when you don't have strong leadership, you are looking for other people to lead you, right? But sometimes God puts you in a situation where there is no person to lead you because he needs you to move this particular initiative. So every time we're looking for somebody else, sometimes God's like, but I've called you. I've called you. What are you doing with your leadership? How are you leading the people that God has called you to lead? It is so easy to look and critique somebody else. It is so easy to sit back and kind of watch things unfold and figure things out. But what are you doing with your leadership? Because somebody is watching you, period. And so I've been thinking about this all week. And, I've been having conversations. I voted, I actually voted last week, but election day was on Tuesday. And, I made sure to make sure the people that I'm connected with were out and voting if they hadn't voted already. I'm trying to find my way in this. I'm sharing different things. I'm doing some other things quietly. I'm trying to find my way in this because I know that there are people that God has assigned to me. And when they see me, I want them to see God. I want my thoughts and my words and my actions to be in alignment with God, to show that that is who I represent. So even though I am feeling angry, I am feeling frustrated, I'm taking time to think before I speak. Think before I respond. Determine and use that discernment of what requires a response from me and what doesn't. This week has been very telling. I have had people that I never thought I would see them speak out in the way that they have spoken out. There are people that actually surprised me with their ability to step in and their boldness of saying this is absolutely unacceptable. And at the same time, I have been very surprised by the people that have been quiet. I've been surprised by the people that claim to love me and claim to love my children and love liking my funny stories that I may share about Kevin or my cool things that I share about Quincy, and yet they are totally silent. It's been very telling, right? But the one thing that I had to condition myself to do is not to judge other people's response, but to check my own. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing with what God has given me? Am I serving and helping and really speaking out in the way that God has told me and directed me to do? So I can't be worried about such and such who isn't doing it or who didn't respond in the way I thought. My question, my own personal conviction is, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And so my encouragement is you can observe and take note of who's talking and who's not talking and just take mental note of that, but direct your focus and attention on what you can do. There is always something that you can do. And you have to understand your role and your place. And so oftentimes, we think if you're not posting a million things on social media, you're not doing enough. Because in this generation, in this season, social media is that forefront. That's that opportunity for you to prove that you're doing something. But guess what? There are many ways to move a movement forward. Maybe you are signing petitions. Maybe you're creating petitions. Maybe you are gathering, and a part of the planning committees of different protests and different events. Maybe you're supporting. There are so many things that you could be doing. Just find what it is that God said to you and get moving. We don't have time to waste worrying about what so and so is doing or is not doing. We don't have time for that. What we need to do is be intentional about what we are saying and what we are doing in this time. Taking care and taking account, having being accountable and taking responsibility for our own leadership, because we are all leading someone. When I think about leadership, and I mean, I could go into a whole tangent about our current president and what is my opinion, his lack of leadership, his lack of integrity, his lack of basic human compassion. But truth be told, he is a reflection of a lot of people that are already here. Racism did not start because he got here. It's been here. It has been here since the beginning of the history of our country. It has been here even before then. And so, but he is a reflection, right? As a leader, you are seeing more people having more boldness with their racism because of his leadership. So again, your leadership can heavily impact your environment. It can shift the surface. It can change the atmosphere if you are leading effectively and properly. What does that even look like? That looks like being submitted to God. That looks like being considerate and understanding that just because it doesn't impact you does not mean that it is not something that is of value. Doesn't mean that it's not important because you're not impacted. I think about our coronavirus situation, and my impact to that has been minimal. I am still able to work. I've still been getting paid. Yes, I had to transform being a teacher in the classroom to being a teacher online doing distance learning. And yes, that was difficult and has its share of challenges. But my life, I've been in my home, safe in my home with my family. We've been healthy. We've had food to eat. Our bills are getting paid. My life hasn't been totally, disrupted. It's been inconvenienced, yes, but it hasn't been totally disruptive. There are people that this virus has devastated. There are people that have lost several family members, have actually died from the virus. There are people that have lost their jobs, lost income, are not able to eat, are not able to pay their bills. There are people that this has devastated. Just because in my situation, I've been able to stay at home, right? I've been able to follow the social distancing, protocols because I'm able to work from home. I'm able to order my groceries online. I'm able to do that. Just because that is my situation does not mean that is the situation for everyone. So I have to put aside my things and be willing to recognize that there are some people that are devastated. They are devastated by what is happening for numerous reasons, and I can be compassionate towards that. We've got to check ourselves in this season. We have got to take that look and really use this time to say, God, what is it that you're saying to me? What am I doing that I can be doing better? What am I not doing that I should be doing? What am I doing that I'm not supposed to be doing? This is the time for personal inventory. I understand that our leadership is whack. I do. But we've got to do our part. And we have got to allow our uprising, our upcoming leaders, we got to give them room. We got to give them opportunity. I look at the government, and if you look at some of the officials, they are so old. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to our elders. I don't mean that to be disrespectful at all. But they are older. You have people that are sitting in seats in our government that are in their 80s. And we need some people that have a fresh perspective, a different perspective. And so many of us are saying, oh my gosh, then when are things going to change? When are things going to get better? But we're not giving those rising leaders the opportunity. And sometimes that requires us to move out the way. Sometimes that requires us to reposition ourselves. It doesn't mean that we no longer have value. It means that we are in a position and that the time that we serve in that role is shifting and changing, and somebody is coming along that can bring something to the table that is what's needed for the current situation. Do not be afraid to reposition your leadership. So many of us, we get in a position of leadership and we try to hold on to it for dear life. We don't want to change nothing. We don't want to hear from nobody else. We don't want a second opinion. We don't want to work as a team. We don't want to hear what that young, fresh from college person thinks, because they're 20 some years old. They don't have nothing to share. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what's best. And that mentality is what keeps us in bondage lots of the time. A lot of the time, we cannot move forward because we are unwilling to change. Effective leadership is leadership that shifts as needed. You cannot be a leader and do the same thing all the time and think that everything is going to magically change. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And sometimes we got to shake stuff up. Are you willing to reposition your leadership to get the job done, to reach the goal? For me, I am a leader in different areas of my life. I run different things. I have a business, and I do things with my job, and I have my children in my home, and in different roles. And, this show, for example, this is my show, right? I come up with the concepts, I come up with the things, but guess what? I'm not the producer of the show. And anyone knows that the producer of the show is the one that makes things happen. The producer of my show is my son, my 13-year-old son. And so there are times where he will say to me when we are getting the show ready, or we're discussing the show that we just had, or we are, brainstorming about the show that's ahead, I may have some things like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and it's going to time here, and we're going to do this at this time. And he will come to me sometimes and say, well, listen, this is what I think we need to do. I think you need to do it this way. Prior to the show, we were discussing the time down to the seconds of what to do at this second. And, I had an idea, and he was like, well, actually, this is what you need to do. And so if I was the type of person that could not be led by somebody that's younger than me, by my child or whatever, I would have been like, well, this is my show, and we're going to do it this way. But I realized that this is his lane. This is what he does well, and that his expertise, regardless of his age, his gift and his talent, is going to be what moves this forward. So therefore, his voice is of equal value to mine. And I listen to his voice. Are you willing to shift your leadership? Are you willing to hear from somebody new? Are you willing to try something new? Are you willing to acknowledge that in this situation, you may not have all the answers? And that doesn't make you inadequate in any way, but there may be somebody that God has been molding. He has been preparing, and this is their moment. Are you willing to shift to bring about the change that you want to see? Even if it means repositioning yourself. You think about David and Goliath. David was young. David had older brothers. He had plenty of people that were more qualified, right? He was like a teenager. And so here you are, you got this big, giant Goliath. Nobody has beat him. Nobody, he's undefeated. And you bring David, and David is like, I'm coming to you in the name of my Father. I will slay you. But I'm sure people may have thought, if I was a spectator, if there was Facebook and Instagram back then, people might have been like, really? Like, of all the people you're going to send, you're sending David? He's scrawny. He's young. He doesn't have enough experience to defeat Goliath. And many people are saying right now, we have some young leaders right now that are like ready to move, but there's somebody in the way that's like, you don't have enough experience. You don't have this. You don't say it like how I say it. You don't do it like how I do it. And we are missing the mark because we're not allowing the leaders that God has ordained for such a time as this to get in. So my challenge to you is to get out the way. If God is telling you to shift and move, and he's showing you that there are some young, and young doesn't necessarily mean age, your chronological age. It can also mean someone that is new to leadership, right? But that might be just what we need. So don't get stuck in your ways of this is how we've always done it, or I'm the boss and I'm in charge and this is how we've been doing it. This is how we are going to do it. If you really want things to change, you're going to have to be willing to change. And that may mean you repositioning your leadership. Let those young leaders that God has prepared for this. They've got the stamina for this. They've got the fresh ideas for this. They've got the boldness for this. Let them move in. Let them move in and coexist, because the new leaders need a seasoned leader. They need a leader that has understood some things to be able to lean on. They need a leader to share something so that we don't have to make the same mistakes over and over. There is a need for both. Things will not change in this world. Things will not change in the body of Christ until the leaders arise, and they arise together. Not, this is how we do it in the Baptist church. This is how we do it in the United Methodist Church. This is how we do it here. No, we've got to rise. We've got to lead, and we have to do it unified. The word of God should be our foundation. And so if you are looking at God, what to do, go to his word. His word says to go make disciples. That is an action statement. That means get up and get out there and start talking. Start living a life that people will be drawn to God just by watching you. Start calling out the injustice. Stop looking at, things that, it don't apply to me, so it's good. Stop thinking inclusive, all or none, and start looking at the problem. Start checking yourself and saying, what can I do to be better? How am I a part of the solution to this problem, or am I a part of the problem? Self-reflect, but let's get going. And leaders arise. You know who you are. You know God is giving you a vision. He's giving you an idea. He's giving you a voice. He's giving you a platform, and you're scared. It's like double dutch. You're outside of the rope, just waiting for the right moment to jump in. The right moment is right now. Do it afraid. And if you get hit by the ropes, take the hit and keep going. But this is the time. If there is a time, if there's never been a time for you to rise up and do what God has called you to do, the time is right now. So leaders, what are you going to do? How are you going to show up and show out? What are you going to do right now? How are you going to use your voice and your platform? Listen, I'm not looking for anybody else to do what God has called me to do. I'm not concerned with my brother over here that maybe he donated $10,000 to something, and maybe my brother over here donated $2. I'm not concerned about what they're doing. I'm focused on God. What are you saying for Whitney to do? What are you telling me to do in this season? What areas of my life do I need to clean up so that I can kill some generational curses in my own family and bloodline and make my community better? What am I doing? What am I willing to give up to bring about change? Listen, I get that right now, social media is jumping. But guess what? In a couple of weeks, something else will be taking our attention, right? And we'll be jumping on that. Who's willing to make a sacrifice to make change? That's where things get tricky. Many of us, we want to post stuff and we want to be on live. We want to make sure it looks like, hey, I'm doing a good job. Look at me, look at me. But what are you going to do when it affects you, when it hits you? Are you willing to sacrifice for it? Are you willing to move forward what God gave you at all costs? And that's easier said than done. Many of us are like, Lord, use me, whatever you way. I say that all the time. And then God starts to use me. And I'm like, hold up, I ain't mean it in that way. Hold on, God. If I say this, like, I don't want to do too much because I'm afraid this may happen. I saw this post and it said something about to the effect of many people aren't speaking up because it goes against their brain, right? They've got their brand. They have their strategic use of social media for whatever, they're trying to push, whether it be business or whatever. And so speaking up and speaking out about things that are unpopular, right? That don't make you feel good, it's bad for the brand. So they're staying quiet. Are you willing to take a risk to do what is right? Are you willing to step out there and use the voice that God gave you? Use the platform that He gave you. Use the gifts and the talents that He gave you. Are you willing to do that and pay the price? The price might be losing some people, right? You may lose some followers. You may lose some business. You may lose some friends, right? You may lose something. I think about, Colin Kaepernick, and one of the things that, I thought about is, the sacrifice that he made of really being blackballed by the NFL. Now, I imagine, I don't know him personally, but I imagine that he was passionate about football. I imagine that maybe when he was a kid and whenever it is that he fell in love with the game, he might have dreamed about being in the NFL. And there's, a lot to his story, but knowing that him speaking out in the way that he did, he knew that there was going to be some consequence, right? He knew that, but he was willing to do that. Are you willing to move forward with whatever God called you to do, whatever leadership position He puts you in? Are you willing to make the sacrifice of whatever that looks like? When God gave me this platform, being blessed with a show here on Awesome God Radio, that came with a sacrifice. That came with me being willing to be transparent and to share the things that God has given me to share, which sometimes feels great and sometimes it doesn't feel great. That required me to sacrifice, time to prepare and to develop the show. It required me to sacrifice some things. It required me to take some hits when some things I said may have gotten misunderstood or misinterpreted or whatever. It required some type of sacrifice. It required me to put myself out there knowing that I might be judged, I might be persecuted, but I was so convinced that God, this is what you said do. This is what you've given me. I'm going to move it forward regardless of what sacrifice is involved. Are you willing to do that? Are you in a position of leadership heavy enough that you are willing to sacrifice and to say, you know what, God, I'm going to move forward and do what you said at all costs. If you told me to use my voice in this way, I'm going to speak up against racism in my workplace or in my community, or I'm going to speak out against these things. I'm going to come alongside and fight for the things that I believe in regardless. And I recognize that there is a sacrifice in that and that there may even be a consequence, but I'm going to move forward in using what God has given me and doing what He said to do. My question is, do you have some sacrifice in you? Many people want to move things forward. We want to be seen as being a part of the movement, but we want to do it at our convenience, and it just doesn't work that way. Things don't change out of convenience. So are you willing? Right now it's pouring down raining, and I know in my hometown of Frederick, Maryland, shout out to Frederick, they had a protest this evening. And, I imagine people might have been like, man, it's going to rain. It's supposed to thunderstorm pretty hard. I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to thunderstorm. But I realized I saw some people that were like, I don't even care about the rain. I will put my rain boots on. I'm going to put my raincoat on. I am going because this is important. This is important. And so you've got to be willing to move these things forward. You've got to be willing to, keep going, and you've got to be willing to make a sacrifice. So are you willing to do that? Are you? Am I? Because it's going to cost you something, family. Like this is not, this is not for the weak. This is not for those that, are, this is not for those that want to do it and make it look cute. Many of us are looking for things to be cute, right? And that's what we want. And, we are uber focused on that part, and we're not focused on really getting to what's happening. And, right now, this is what we are up against. Are you willing to do the work? Listen, people are dying. People are dying, and we don't have time to be peace. And I understand that it may require, you to do something that's uncomfortable. I understand that it may require you to step outside your comfort zone, but we are going to have to do something because the world needs us. Right now, we are transitioning into the second half of our show, and we have an amazing guest who is joining us right now. He is a phenomenal author. He is a pastor. He is a leader. He is someone that I know and love personally, and I'm honored that he is on my show. So I want to welcome to the She Heals Radio Show, Pastor Reverend Kevin Johnson. Hey, Pastor Kevin.
Hey there, how you doing this evening? Glad to be with you. Thank you so much for this wonderful invitation.
No problem. I am so glad you're here. And so if you've been listening to the first half of the show, I am just fired up about all things leadership, because what we need the most right now is strong leadership, but also recognizing that there is a leader inside of all of us. And so I would like for you to first just share a little bit about who you are, and then also about your latest book, because that ties into exactly what we're talking about.
All right, Whitney, thanks again. So for those of you that I may not have met yet, Kevin Wayne Johnson is my name. I reside in Clarksville, Maryland. I'm halfway between our nation's capital and Baltimore. Mm-hmm. I just recently retired. And when I say recently, about 2.5 years ago, from the federal government after 34 years of total service, 20 of which I served at the mid-level and senior level within the federal government. I observed and I experienced a lot. I'm also the proud father of 3 sons, 22, 23, and 24. So I believe that leadership starts in the home.
Absolutely.
And I've been married for 27 years. So as a husband and as a father, a lot of the leadership skills actually begin in the home that can then transition out into the workplace, the neighborhood meetings, the churches, the social organizations, because when it's all said and done, we want to use our gifts and our abilities and our talents to make the world a much better place. In parallel with that, I've been actively engaged in ministry for the past 20 years in leadership positions as a deacon, men's choir, adjunct professor, president of a Bible school, associate pastor, and senior pastor, all part of my personal development and my professional development so that I can continue to align with God's plan for my life. Oftentimes when we're going through our particular assignments, we don't always quite understand what God is up to. Just like this perfect storm that we're in right now. We don't know what God is up to, but we keep him first and foremost in our lives, knowing that he is in total and complete control. And I'm also very actively engaged in ministry at the national level with the Church of God Ministries, and internationally as I travel over to Kenya, Africa, every August to do church development, leadership training, leading workshops and crusades with the men and women there as well. So it's been a wonderful journey, a wonderful ride. And for the past 19 years, I've been authoring books, different types of books, all nonfiction, because in my heart, I'm looking to raise awareness and also to educate my audience. Absolutely. So I started out with an 8-book series, Give God the Glory. And then I've also been a contributing author to other books. And now that I'm in chapter 2 of my life, I'm in the space of leadership because I'm aligned with God's plan for my life right now. And that is to train and equip the current and next generation of leadership. Yeah. We have a crisis, not just in our nation, but we have a crisis in the world as it pertains to leadership. We do. And anybody who denies that, you're just fooling yourself. If you take a look around in terms of how things are operating, how they're running, people's character, integrity, ethics, not focusing on others, but just focusing on self. There is a void in that area. And I do believe, Whitney, and everybody that's listening and watching, that we need to, within our sphere of influence, do what we can to prepare the next generation of leaders, because good leaders make our world a much better place. And I believe all 7 billion people on the planet deserve to be treated well. And that's what we're talking about when it comes to servant leadership.
Absolutely. And in the first segment of my show, I was actually just talking about that, of allowing our upcoming leaders, giving them an opportunity to even enter in. I think sometimes we get in positions of leadership and it's hard to transition into another realm of leadership. We get where we are and we feel like, this is where I am. This is great. And it's hard when you have somebody coming up that's ready to, not to take your spot, but ready to move into their opportunity of leadership. But we're kind of in the way because we haven't moved into the next thing. So talk a little bit about what can we do to prepare our leaders, our upcoming leaders, our young.
Well, there are 3 things. Yeah, there's 3 things, Whitney, and I kind of pontificate and I articulate and I communicate this message within all of my circles, including the phone calls and emails that I'm getting from across the country when people are asking questions. Number 1, you and I have to be bold enough to start the conversation. Yeah. Now, remember, a conversation is 2-way. We have to be just as good as listening as we are with espousing our views and our opinions and our perspectives. We have to be, because when you listen to people, what you're demonstrating is that you value and care what they're saying, even if you disagree. So we can agree to disagree, but we have to have the conversation. I always tell people, without confrontation, there is no resolution. And we're not going to get to any type of a resolution unless we have a conversation. So that's the first thing. Conversation then leads, Whitney, to reconciliation. Yeah. Now, this is the She Heals radio show. And that's where we're going. We're trying to get to healing, but it begins with a conversation, because conversation leads us to reconciliation. And God's word reminds us all that regardless of position and regardless of title, not only are we leaders, but we're also ministers of reconciliation. That's what the word says. Absolutely. You don't need a title, and you don't need to stand in the pulpit, and you don't need to have a microphone. You are a leader right where you are, and you are a minister, a servant of reconciliation. And then last but not least, then that, Whitney, is what leads to healing. And people say, well, healing from what? Well, healing from bondage, healing from untruth, healing from past hangups, healing from anything that you and I might be healing from that happened to us in the past, present, or perhaps what we fear might happen in the future. That's where the healing takes place. And all we have to do is just look at our sphere of influence. We don't have to change the world, but Kevin Johnson began in the home, teaching this to my sons, who are now 22, 23, and 24, so that when they spread their wings and they leave the nest, they know how to be good fathers and to be good husbands and to be good American citizens, because they learned it at home. Now I want them to wash, rinse, and repeat and teach their children, and then they teach their children. And if all of us would take that stance, we could together, individually and collectively, make the world a much better place. I believe that's what I teach. That's what I share. That's what I espouse in front of all audiences. It doesn't matter what you believe and how you believe it. It's a universal concept. Conversation leads to reconciliation, that leads to healing. And so we know from scripture, Jesus teaches us that he's the way, the truth, and the life. And it's the truth that makes us free. And, I give my sons examples all the time, when I was a younger man and they were little fellas, too early to understand some of the mistakes that I would make in life. And instead of trying to hide that mistake, I would go have a conversation with a person that I wronged, or someone lost confidence in me because I didn't keep my word. I would go back to them and have a conversation about it. And it's so freeing.
Yeah.
That burden is off of your shoulders. But guess what? It would never, I can't get to healing until I have the conversation, and then right in the middle of reconciliation. So if we would do that, that's the national conversation I'm having right now, Whitney. As I go from Seattle to Kennebunkport to San Diego to Miami and every place else in between, this is the conversation that we're having around this topic of servant leadership, because we can all do something. We don't need a position. We don't need a title. We just need to do something, because when it's all said and done, we're all leaders.
Yes, I could not agree more with you. I think that a lot of us are looking for someone else, and we're looking to someone else, and God is saying, well, I'm looking at you. So, we're always looking. And I know in my own personal life, being a widow, I was looking, and I used to always say, well, I have sons. I have 2 sons, and I can't teach them how to be men because I am a woman. I am a mother. I can't teach them that. And God had to kind of convict me and say, you may not be able to teach them that, but you can lead them how I've designed you. You can give them what I gave you to give to them, and I'll take care of the rest. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that we all have a voice. We all have a platform. We all have the ability, but it starts, like you said, with the conversation. In my opinion, what's happening right now, at least from my take and then what's happening around me, is I'm seeing more conversations starting to take place than what I'm used to seeing. I am definitely, and if you look at the world right now, I think that like what you just said, the conversations are starting to take place, and we have to pay attention, otherwise we'll miss it. That things, I just have seen a little bit more courageous conversation, than I'm used to. I'm used to seeing nobody saying anything, the same people saying everything. And now I see people that are starting to arise. And so what can we do with that right now as it relates to leadership? Now that in some places that conversation is starting to take place. Now what?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I just want to echo one more time. So we're taking the right step forward. Now, in order to continue the dialogue and conversation and discussion, and to continue to make people more comfortable with speaking the truth in terms of what's happening, again, I want to go back to it. You and I have to develop good listening skills.
That's right.
See, we talk at a pace that's much slower than what we listen. We actually talk at a pace of about 180 words a minute, but we actually listen at a pace at about 350 words a minute. And the challenge that we have when we have conversations, one with another and with groups, is that when Whitney is talking to me, and if I already discern, or if I already think I know where Whitney is going before she's even done with her sentence, I tune her out.
Right.
And if I tune you out before you're able to articulate your full point, then we're not effectively communicating, because conversation is two-way. So we have to be very careful to make sure that we listen to those that are talking to us, because it shows that we value and care what they're saying. And then that helps us to get to the next step, which is ultimately reconciliation. And see, listening is something that has to be taught. It's not innately ingrained in us, again, because there's a dichotomy between the speed with which we talk and the speed with which we actually hear and listen. And the last thing you want to do is have a person to feel like this when they walk away from you after having a conversation, because you clearly show that you're not interested, or that you disagree, or that you're not right, or that you don't know what you're talking about. Right. And that's my biggest concern. I'm glad we're having the dialogue, but my biggest concern is that we not go past one another, but that we actually see eye to eye, even if we don't agree.
Right.
Still hear them out. The last thing you want to do when a person is talking to you, the last thing you want to do is interrupt or change the subject. Oh my goodness. Because then the defense barriers go up and conversation is now moved. So that's the part that I am encouraging my audiences to be very, very sensitive to when they're having the conversation, because we're all very passionate about what it is we want to say, our views and our perspectives, and that's good. But learning to listen is not an easy thing to do. It could potentially derail the conversation, which we don't want to happen, but we just have to be aware of it. And these are some things that I tell people all the time. A good leader is a good listener.
Yes, you cannot listen if you can't lead. You can't lead if you can't listen. You are so right.
Not effectively. I mean, you can, but you're just not. You're not going to be as effective as when you hear others out and give them a chance to say, "Have you considered this? Have you thought about this? What about this way? Instead of going east, have you considered if we go west?" At least give it some thought and let the other person know that you value their input and their insight. It'll take us further as leaders.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you touched on a little bit earlier is also checking our pride, and in that, some of us might think, we know because of certain experiences that we may have, or our pedigree, or, and so being willing to listen to every voice at the table. I think that especially in times like this, we just want to be heard. So many people just want to be heard, but sometimes we are immediately dismissed. And, a good example that I think about is, in the world of special education. So I know you have some experience in that world. I have experience in that world as well. And, thinking of the IEP table where there's a parent there advocating for a child, and then there is, the team of educators, and everybody comes with something, right? So as the parent, they're the expert on that child, what they do well and what they don't do well. And then you have the different people, that are at the table, but everybody plays a part. And I think that what happens is there's so much friction because everybody wants to be heard, but people are looking at you and they're judging you based on your pedigree. So, okay, are you a doctor in your field? Or do you have a college degree at all? Do you know enough Bible to tell me about what's in the Word of God? How many times have we dismissed, someone in conversation and really missed an opportunity to be led because of our own pride or our own biases? So it's the people that say, "Oh, I can't talk to you because you don't look like you know what you're talking about," right? So how can we kind of break through those barriers? Because I honestly think a lot of what's happening and the reason why our leadership is so just not where it needs to be is there's that pride that is in the way. So how can we break up some of that?
Well, a couple of thoughts there, Whitney, and you're right. You and I definitely have that in common. I go back a little bit further because when I was 4 years old is when my brother was born. My brother was born with a mental disability, so I've had to lead my family with my mom while Dad was away in the U.S. Marine Corps fighting in America's war. So I've been fighting that battle for a good little while, and then fast forward, having 3 sons, and the baby boy in 2000 is diagnosed with autism, so I have to live it all over again. Again, it's a matter of helping people through training, through coaching, through mentoring, and through ongoing communication and conversation to get people outside of their own little bubble in terms of their intelligence, their acumen, their title, their degrees, their education, and transfer it over to taking care of others. Because leadership is such an awesome responsibility. Leadership is one of the 20 spiritual gifts that God gives to people. It's actually a spiritual gift, and all good and perfect gifts come from above.
Wow.
I just wanted to throw that in there. So it's important that we cultivate, that we learn how to navigate in that space, because it's such an awesome responsibility, and really understand the underlying reason for leaders. Leaders are in position so they can develop others. It's no longer about us. When we elevate to a leadership position, it's not about us anymore. We've demonstrated that we can do the work. Now our job is to take care of the people who will do the work. And that's where a lot of people miss it. But again, it's not necessarily innately ingrained in us. It's something that has to be taught. People need to be coached, and they need to be mentored. So what you'll see, Whitney, now more and more in the workplace, many of the human resource directors and the chief learning officers are now hiring coaches to come in and provide the necessary coaching that's needed for their leaders and for their workforce. This is becoming more of a normal trend, and it's very effective, and it works. Coach is what distinguishes which athletes go to the Olympic Games and which ones don't. They have a better coach. They have a much more refined coach, and that's what gets them to the Olympics versus the person that comes in fourth place. So it's sort of a long-winded answer, but it's an open-ended question that sort of deserves a long answer. That's what needs just constant awareness and constant education and constant training on the topic, because we have 5 generations of people right now in the workplace, in the church, in our social organizations, and guess what? All these generations don't process information the same. They don't communicate the same. They don't think alike. There's a whole bunch of generational differences. Personalities are involved. So, we can't just throw people into a leadership position and think they know what to do. We have to help them out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so what, as we, the show is moving quickly. So I have a two-part question. The first part for you is, what do you say to the people that maybe right now, because of what's happening specifically in our world today, racial tensions really being exposed, the coronavirus and economic, downfall for some people, they are feeling that pit in their belly of, I need to do something. God is really starting to shake something and stir something up in them. What are some tips you would give them just to get started? What are some things they need to consider? Like right now they feel that push and maybe they're afraid. I know for me, I was a background person, and God has been shifting and moving me into, the forefront of certain things, and it's kind of scary. And so what is some advice you would give to them? And then I also, after that, I want you to share a little bit about what some of the services that you offer and where we can find your books and connect with you.
Okay. So a couple of things came to mind, Whitney, when you asked the question, and you actually answered it. I'm not sure if you realize it or not, but for every person that comes along with this pandemic that we're in, I actually call it the perfect storm. The perfect storm in the fact that the president of the United States was impeached. Then right after that, COVID-19 pandemic hit. And then right after that, this latest issue with the police brutality. So we're in the midst of a lot of things happening. Take your first step.
Yes.
Even in the midst of fear, take your first step, because what you're going to find out is when you take that first step, you're going to find out it's not as bad as you thought it was. That word fear, I break that fear down. The word fear is nothing more than false expectations appearing real. That's all that fear is. It's just a false expectation. It appears real, but take your first step. Then once you take your first step, just kind of focus on this quiet time that we have, and this time of isolation that we have. You can spend more time with God. You can read your favorite book, get some spiritual insight, whether it's the Bible or a good book to draw you closer to the one who created you, who knows you intimately. But you have to take that first step. You know, one of the things that I've done in terms of what I'm doing for a living now is I'm staying very a lot of discussion and a lot of dialogue around a lot of different topics, helping each other, walking each other. And also to answer the second part of your question, Whitney, in terms of what I'm doing, a lot of leadership development, training, coaching, master. I'm working with the local universities and colleges, student leadership conferences, and then also corporations as well. I'm doing all of that, and the emails are not slowing down. The phone the phone calls are increasing, and everything space I'm in. That's what I'm doing in chapter 2, because that's my DNA. That's the core of who I am, and so I'm leading the Johnson Leadership Group, and then our website is and the email address is thejohnsonleadershipgroup@gmail.com if anybody wants to reach out and touch. But I do believe that we do crisis in leadership, and I'm doing something about it. I mean, it's I have a lot of experience in this area. I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I'm not saying I did everything right. Oftentimes when I'm teaching, I use examples of things that I did that I'm not proud of that weren't right. But what I've done is to correct those.
Absolutely.
And then help those leaders. And I'm in a good. All right, still there?
Yep, I'm still here. I can hear you.
Okay, all right. We yeah. So did you get you got the website information?
I did, and we will put it in the live. So we will put it in the comments on both YouTube and on our Facebook live feed so that people can reach out to you. I just, wanted to say, as someone that has known you for some time and you have been influential in my own personal life, I am just so thankful for the work that you do. I imagine it is not easy, but I just appreciate your willingness to step out and do what God has called you to do, and really to have some answers and some strategic steps of how we can solve some of the problems. Many of us are able to reveal what the issue is, but we actually need some steps in place to solve, to solve some of these issues. And so thank you for being on the front lines of doing that. So again, it is the Johnson Leadership Group at gmail.com. Say the website
Correct.
again for me one more time.
www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. Awesome. All the contact information is there, the events calendar, the leadership books, all that good stuff. Everything you need is right there. You know this, Whitney, but the website is our electronic brochure, so everything's right there.
Absolutely. So please check in with him. Please reach out to him. If you have a business or organization that you're looking to, have some leadership qualities in place, he's a great resource. If you're just looking to figure out your next steps for what God has given you, he is an exceptional resource. Grab his books, have him come and speak. I'm telling you, you will be blessed and you will learn things that will help you move forward. Pastor Kevin, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for all the support over the years. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be around you and to be in community with you. I want to just, as we shift gears, as the show is closing out, I just want to encourage our listeners.
Well, let me just say.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so proud of you, Whitney, all the great work you're doing, raising your phenomenal son.
Thank you.
God loves you, and so do I. And keep doing what you're doing. You are more of an inspiration than you realize.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really do. I just want to be who God
You're
called
welcome.
me to be and doing what he said.
Yep.
That's it. I just want to encourage, just like myself, who kind of God just opened some doors and I went through them. I want to encourage our listeners. If God is positioning you for leadership, take that first step. The world will become a better place when everybody is in their position doing what God has called them to do. So let's get there. I want to thank Pastor Kevin for being on the show. I want to thank Quincy for doing an amazing job producing. I want to thank my Awesome God Radio family. It's a pleasure being a part of this team. I just want to thank God for just all that he is doing, even when it may feel like he is not around. That's when he's with us the most. And I just pray that you enjoyed this show. I pray that to everybody listening, that you will do your part in leadership and accept your role in leadership as we move forward. In closing, she thinks, she feels, she prays, she cries, she fasts, she reads her word, she steps into position, she strengthens, and ultimately she heals. This is the She Heals Radio Show with your host, Whitney J. Have an amazing weekend. Take care. We will see you back here next Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care. God bless. Yeah.